You know, this is what every single last king needs to understand. Currently, I'm in the cut. I'm on campus in a conference room. And, I'm in here on campus doing what I do best. I think, and I think a lot. And currently, I'm broke as hell. Tomorrow I start delivering groceries for bread. I start delivering groceries for bread. I'll be spoiling my girl, but damn. I think we're like Six Flags is like $600. I think we're at like $5,000 in total spent on that girl, man. Like, it's crazy. But I like giving love, I like expressing it. You feel me? I like doing that. It's not for the gain, it's not for the benefit, it's not for the need. It's simply for the expression. That's how love should be. It should simply be for the expression, because when it's from the need or the gain or the want, I want something in return, I need something in return, I gain something in return. It's not really love, it's really selfishness disguised as love. But anyway, today, I was in here thinking, and I got two videos. One, the nature of fatherhood, and the other one, how the whole game works. One thought led to another. It's like a big puzzle piece being solved, a big trail being followed. That's how all this works. But basically, now which video am I going to do? Either the nature of fatherhood or how the entire game works. I think I'll do how the entire game works. But basically, I was in a deep, thinking state. I was thinking about how things are the way they are, and I realized how the entire thing works. And this whole society is built on basically external self-definition. This whole society is built on external self-definition. And by that, I mean, what defines me, what defines myself, what defines my sense of self is in the external. What defines my self-image, what defines my self-worth is in the external. And this is how this whole society, this capitalist society, America, this is how everything is built. This is how everything is run. Basically, consumerism. This is how the whole system gets you. This is how the whole system enslaves you. And by that, I mean, my worth, my self-definition, how I see myself is in the external. It's by basically what I have, how other people view and see me. And this shows up in a lot of ways. One, of course, material, the fast car, the house, the clothes I wear, the sneakers I wear, the way my hairstyle, how good I look externally. That's one way. And the other way is also, like the relationship I have, the amount of friends I have, the title, the degree, the school I go to. This whole society is built on external definition. That's how this society is built. And that's how the system enslaves you. That's how the system enslaves you. Because when you have that belief, nothing, first of all of that is built upon desire that is not internal desire. Your foundation isn't built internally. And that's ripe for enslavement. That's ripe for dependency. Dependency is the best word to use. That's how they get you dependent, because, the nature of desire is that desire inherently can never be satisfied. By being externally defined, I'm constantly desiring the external. I need the external to fulfill me, to define me, and that keeps you basically on a hamster wheel of never being satisfied. Even if I get the relationship, even if I get the car, even if I get the house, I'm always going to be wanting more. I'm always going to want something else external to, I'm always going to want something else external, because my foundation isn't rooted in myself. And not only that, the nature of desire is that it is inherently unsatisfiable. And it's basically like a hole. It's constantly you're filling a hole with just sand that has, it's never going to fill. It's like a hole that will never fill. It's always going to keep you wanting more. You're always going to be in a state of just constantly wanting more, until eventually, you're going to burn out. Now, either two things are going to happen, and this is why, everybody says, the most rich people, the people that, they got everything, people wondering, why the hell did they crash or kill themselves? It's because they were rooted in the external. They didn't really know themselves, you know. They didn't really know their why. They didn't know their how. You know, they were just following a script. They didn't really know themselves. They thought what would satisfy them was in the external. They weren't defined by self. They were defined by them. They were defined by the car, by the house, by the material, by the relationship. And not only that, you know, not only is it dangerous to be defined by that, but basically what I'm saying is that, you know, also being defined by that, when those things leave, you fall apart, you crumble because your foundation isn't rooted in yourself. So this is very dangerous, but this is how they keep you enslaved. This is how the whole system works. You know, they keep you dependent on the external. They think, they fill you with the belief that what will define you, what will, you know, what's basically going to give you your worth is in the external. This is how they keep you enslaved, you know, because it's going to keep you dependent on the external, you know, instead of realizing, and this comes through self-realization. Now, the suffering that comes, like I described two paths, you know, either they're going to burn out, they're going to have everything external, they're going to realize they're also empty, you know, either the person's going to realize that or they're just going to kill themselves. Those are the two paths being defined in the external is going to lead to. Now, the first path I talked about, you know, realizing that I have all this stuff is going to, the first path that I talked about, you know, realizing I have all this stuff, I'm still not fulfilled. That's what's going to lead to self-realization. That suffering that caused, you know, all that is in the bubble of suffering, you know, because, but all that is in a bubble of suffering. And suffering, you know, it's like what I said in the previous videos. It's not meaningless, you know. It's not meaningless. Suffering, you know, it's evil. You know, people say it's evil, but it's like what the old saying goes: the force that works for evil also works for good. Suffering works for good, because that's suffering. You know, two outcomes with it: either you're going to kill yourself, you're going to become bitter, or you're going to realize yourself. And suffering is there so you can realize yourself. That's why suffering is there. You know, it's not meaningless. It's there to show you yourself. You know, to ask yourself, why am I suffering? That suffering is going to lead to self-realization. And it's going to lead to the realization that, you know, nothing external, no external definition is going to define me. Only I can define me. You know, only I can complete me. You know, only I can complete me. That self-realization, that is what that's going to lead to. You know, all that suffering, that's the end goal. The force for evil inherently works for the force for good, you know, and that's what's going to lead to you being defined, not by any of them, not by anything external, not by no degree, no car, no house, no relationship. That's what's going to lead you to being defined by self, realizing I complete me. And, you know, you get to that point by truly knowing yourself, truly learning yourself, truly knowing your how and your why, truly knowing your purpose past all and any of them, you know, truly, you know, gaining a true conviction, gaining a true why, gaining a pure purpose, you know, outside of any of them, you know, a purpose that isn't tied to anything external, you know, a purpose that is defined by self. That's what that's going to lead to. True self-realization. And that self-realization is going to lead to self-actualization. But anyway, that's how this whole system works. That's how this whole game works. This society runs on basically the belief that the external, what's outside of me, is what is going to fulfill me and satisfy me. This whole system is built on being defined by them, not being defined by self. And when you're defined by them, when you're not defined by self, when you're defined in the external, you're very easy to control because you're dependent. True freedom is when you're defined by self, not defined by any of them, but defined by self. That's true freedom. That is really leaving the matrix, you know, being your own master, being your own constant, your own definition. And it takes a lot to get to this point. You know, you got to suffer. Suffering, you know, you don't have to, you know, some say you don't have to suffer, but suffering is a way, you know, at least most people get to this point, get to the self-realization that, you know, this realization comes with. But anyway, that's how the whole system works, you know.